Wait a minute. Where's the main guy, Max?
Right now?
Right now.
In a hospital room, fighting for his life.
Why?
His wife tried to poison him. She had grown tired of his wacky yet endearing antics. We don't know why she resorted to poisoning.
You don't know?
No, Zac.
He treated her like a doormat.
Oh, well...
She was about to be confined to spending the rest of her life with Max. She was looking down the barrel of immortality, her autonomy, for God's sake.
Yes, Zac. Okay.
Okay. So the Eggman is dead.
Yes.
The eggs are...
gone, Zac.
Okay.
But there was this snag.
What?
Well, this analyst, Danny, was attacking the bank guy. It was in broad daylight, on the street, and our woman there didn't know what to do. She felt she had to step in.
Yes.
She shot the analyst. She shot Danny.
Good. Great. Is he dead?
No, Zac, he's in a coma. They don't think he's going to make it. They're pretty sure he has no brain function.
Okay. If he wakes up, worry about it then. Jesus, what a clusterfuck. So that's it then. No one else really knows what's going on. Okay.
Well, Zac, there is...
What? What?
There is the woman, the pop singer, Candizita Vivaldi.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, God. Where is she?
We picked her up. We have her.
We have her. To do what with?
She says she'll play ball if we pay for some... I know this sounds odd. Some sessions she wants. Music recording sessions. She says she'll sit on everything.
How much?
There were several bookings. Altogether, they...
Pay it.
Yes, Zac. Okay.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
What did we learn, Louis?
I don't know, Zac.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to watch it again.
Yes.
Though I'm fucked if I know what we watched.
Yes, Zac. It's hard to say.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And that is the best opening bit I've ever written. By just stealing someone else's writing. Hello and welcome to the Davis on Davis podcast. This is the final episode of our series on Mine All Mine, which is set in Swansea. We'll be leaving Swansea. Swansea will be dumped in the ocean by the end of today's episode.
Woohoo! Oh no, we've been stuck in Swansea. I can't wait to get out of Swansea. That's a lie. I'm actually loving it here. I just want to open today's episode of the Davis on Davis podcast with an apology to J.K. Simmons. J.K., if you're listening, that's not what I think you sound like. It's just Louis put a metaphorical gun to my head and made me pretend to be J.K. Simmons. Yes.
If you don't know, that was a pastiche of the final scene of the movie Burn After Reading by the Coen brothers. And Zac was playing the character who in the movie is played by J.K. Simmons. Yeah, I was sort of... you won't tell, but I was pretending to smoke a cigarette partway through, but I realised in the camera it probably just looked, Louis, like I was pointing a gun at you. Yeah. Also, he doesn't smoke a cigarette in the... No, he doesn't, but I feel like that, to me, that was my physical crutch for getting in the head. That was your J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, exactly. And that's... because I haven't seen the film in question. Oh, you should never go into a podcast and admit you've not seen the film. Yeah. That will haunt me forever now. No, yeah. Unwise. But anyway, before we get into the episode, what have you done this week? What have I done? So I feel like I promised the listener this last time because I mentioned, well, it will have gone in the bonus podcast that we did. Maybe who knows how I get censored on this podcast. It was in there because Juno Dawson, right? Yes. So me and my friend Pip, who's a friend of the show, former guest of the show, who I seem to talk about literally every other episode. I do have other friends that I do also hang out with. Yeah, Zach's beard Pip. Well, the funny story is, people think, well, we have been mistaken for a couple at least once. We were mistaken for a couple at this thing that we went to. But that's by the by. We went to an evening with Juno Dawson in conversation with Andrew McMillan. I don't know if that should be the other way around, as in the evening was about Juno Dawson and the poet Andrew McMillan was asking her questions. So I don't know which way around. It's supposed to be who's in conversation with who, technically. I'll find out. But that was part of the Manchester Literature Festival, and she was talking about the latest novella in her series, Her Majesty's Royal Coven, Queen Bee.
And I, in preparation for listening to her talk about the books, I've actually read the books because I discovered Juno Dawson a couple of years ago when Doctor Who Redacted came out. Sorry to mention Doctor Who on our anti-Doctor Who podcast. Thought her writing was absolutely amazing. Sort of have followed her social media since she did the Doctor Who podcast, the official Doctor Who podcast, but realised I'd never actually read any of the books that she'd written, so was really excited to actually sink my teeth into this series that she's currently working on. The third book of the main trilogy comes out next summer, and this novella that's come out is sort of a prequel because she admitted to her publisher that she wouldn't be able to get the third book of the trilogy out on time, so she promised them a novella instead so they could meet their publishing quotas. Isn't the world of commercial bookselling fabulous? So that's what I did, and she's absolutely fantastic person. She really funny, really witty. Spoke at length. She didn't speak at length. She sort of really balanced because without spoiling anything about the series of books, because it's about a secret department in the government that's essentially, it's a modern day coven of witches. So it's sort of an urban fantasy novel. Without spoiling too much, the first novel in particular is very much commenting on the state of trans rights in the UK. And it was really interesting to hear Juno Dawson, as a trans woman, talk about the decision to write a book about that. She's written non-fiction books. So one of her most famous books is This Book is Gay, which is one of the most banned books in the United States. She's also written extensively about her transition.
Yeah, they really hate the Brits over there. They never got over the...
So it was really interesting to talk on balance about being a queer trans author in the fantasy genre, but then also talk about all the other aspects that come behind writing a book. How the Spice Girls kind of inspired the book. Yeah, just an absolute fantastic evening.
Wow.
And I got her to sign my books, which was really nice. Yeah, I've not really got much more insight other than I highly recommend Her Majesty's Royal Coven series by Juno Dawson. I've not read any of her other, because her stuff before this is technically in the YA genre, and I have sort of, not to be like I've outgrown that genre, but I don't really read the YA and haven't done since I was more of a teenager. So I haven't gone back. Maybe I should. Maybe I'll look into seeing what else she's written. But yeah, this adult fantasy series I highly recommend.
Nice.
Woo. So Louis, how have you been? You've been up to anything interesting recently?
I've been watching the TV show Supercell. It was released a few months ago, but when I was watching it, I was thinking, wait a second, why do I recognise this main character? What has he been in? And then I looked up and I realised that it is actually Tosin Cole, who you may know from the long-running science fiction series Doctor Who. He plays the character of Ryan Sinclair. And the show is about people in Peckham, specifically black people in Peckham, getting superpowers. So it's quite a bit like Misfits, if you remember Misfits.
I do.
But in Peckham instead of Thamesmead. Yeah, do you want to guess what his power is?
Is it inappropriate of me to say not dyspraxia? That's a reference to the character Ryan. That's not being ableist.
Yeah, no. Well, it's interesting because part of the show, and this interests me a lot as sort of as someone involved in science communication, is that part of the plot is that the superpowers are linked to sickle cell anemia, which is a condition that mainly affects black people of, I believe it's West African descent. And there's some interesting reasons why. I think if you're a carrier but you don't have it, but you carry the gene, then that makes you more resistant to malaria, and so that's quite interesting. But no, his superpower is not dyspraxia, or is not having dyspraxia. I ask you because it's the most obvious one. If I mention he was in Doctor Who,
he can time travel.
Yes. Yes.
I was going to say, when you didn't know where you recognised Tosin Cole from, I was going to say his appearance in Doctor Who is somewhat irrelevant. He's actually the main artist in the song and music video "You'll Do It If You Keep On Trying," featuring Graham. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it.
Is that Doctor Who poop?
Yeah, it's Doctor Who poop.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I genuinely, it's obviously it's a poop music video of some lines from the first episode of the 13th Doctor's era.
Yes.
But I genuinely, in the middle of the pandemic, used it as an inspirational song to help me get through tough times.
That's good, yeah.
I remember lying on the floor in my first year of uni, in my kitchen at home, listening to that, and it got me through. It got me through the other side.
Wow.
So thank you.
But yeah, so this show, Supercell, has been renewed for a second series, which is nice because I think last time I talked about the show Chaos, which was cancelled after one series, but it ends on quite a cliffhanger, or not even a cliffhanger. It just ends on like the promise of exploring this world more.
Yeah.
And like now we don't get to. And so I was very sad about that. But then I thought, well, maybe I should just watch shows which have been renewed. But then if you don't watch the show, it doesn't get renewed. So like, you can't win, you know.
I have some interesting insight. I can't. There's some things I can't reveal. But as Juno Dawson was talking about, because Chaos came up because we were talking about TV, because she also writes for TV as well, about how because she knows Chaos was written by
Charlie
Covell.
Yeah.
Juno Dawson was saying Netflix does this really weird thing where it treats its TV shows like films, in that they have an opening weekend and there's a sort of a target that everything needs to hit in the opening weekend, and things don't get the time, the weeks or the months to sort of grow in an audience, and it's really stressful.
No, yeah, totally. If it has 8 episodes, you should give it 8 weeks,
And Chaos getting cancelled 5 weeks after it came out. I mean, apparently even Alice Oseman, the creator and writer behind Heartstopper, was stressed that if not enough people watched Heartstopper when it came out, they're not going to get a 4th series, even though that Heartstopper is the biggest thing to come out of Netflix in the last few years.
Yeah, it's insanely popular and it's relatively cheap to produce, because there's no fantasy elements. So
yeah, it's insane. Yeah, that whole world of TV, it's kind of crazy. That's why I'm back to reading books.
Yeah.
It's less toxic.
Oh, there are many a video essay about the effect of the streaming model on the industry. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a show from 20 years ago, when none of these problems existed and there are a whole different set of problems to sink your teeth into.
Do you think Mine on Mine would have been cancelled by Netflix and not given a second series if it went off now?
I mean, considering it was cancelled by ITV, yes. So...
Now, here's a debate we'll get to at the end of the show. Was it cancelled? Or would it just never have had a second season?
Who knows? But before that, let's start at the start and just get into it. So Max is recording a campaign video. Maria is directing him, and she's like, you got to speak to the people of Swansea, you got to tell them why they should vote for you, why they should vote to keep you in charge. And he says, okay, you know what, I will rename the city of Swansea after my late mother. And she's like, what, Babs? And he's like, no, Barbara. It's like, oh, that makes it okay then. This establishes that sort of right now, there's no way Max is going to win. That's where we've started at.
It's really weird, the narrative this episode sets up, because sort of the cliffhanger from the previous episode was there's going to be this big vote. And so you almost think this episode is going to be a will they, won't they, but with the result of this referendum. Except there's no real tension, because we kind of think from the beginning it's Max out. So instead it becomes a ticking clock of, he's only got so many hours before he's going to get voted out. So it's an interesting direction to take the final episode's drama, I think. I'm going to praise Russell T Davies.
Yeah, Max should do like a US president thing and just try and push through as much obstructive legislation as he can while he still has time.
Yeah. This sort of structure that's set at the beginning allows the other dramas, the other tensions and conflicts within the characters in this final episode to rise to the forefront, as we will see as we go through.
We now go to the town centre, where a stage is being, or I guess not towns, the waterfront it would be, because it is by the sea, and a stage is being set up, and there's a big banner on one side saying Max in, and big banner on the other side Max with an X, a cross over his face. And this is like the campaign centre. And naturally, Candy is up there testing the microphone. testing, 1, 2, 3, and it's really loud. Like, they sort of... I know, like, with sound design, you don't just, like, up the volume to make something loud. You, like, add more echo or whatever. But, like, it sounds like, oh, no, this is too loud. I noticed that, yeah.
It doesn't help that I bet she's shouting into the mic. I'm trying to think of where the context of when this happens, but every time I've been in a room where people have to take a mic, maybe I'm thinking about karaoke, but people always shout into microphones.
Yeah.
I've hosted events where you give someone a microphone, they think they have to shout, and Candy's definitely sort of burst and thinks, oh my god, I'm going to shout.
Yes.
I half expected her to start singing that song of hers, but she didn't. Real shame.
No, instead, Max and Val sort of show up in a taxi. They get out, and of course the first questions to them by the reporters are you staying together? And Max is like, yes, we are. And Val is wearing sunglasses, which is a very interesting touch. She looks good with sunglasses.
I think the sort of the visuals of this episode change ever so slightly in terms of the paparazzi and reporters around the Vivaldis becomes far more like paparazzi chasing celebrities, if that makes sense. So with the Val wearing her sunglasses, with everyone sort of trying to get a comment, we even see later other characters like the Eggman being tracked and traced by the reporters in front of his front door, asking for comment, which we haven't quite seen before in the show. We've seen large groups of people. We saw other lawyers in I think episode 1 or 2, and there has been loads of people around outside the house. But now I feel like there is national attention around this case. You know, really the stakes are high and people are asking these very personal questions of Val and Max.
No, definitely. We get a bit of world building later where they're setting up a debate, and Stella says that, you know, we got calls from some like TV station. They were willing to host it. Could have been in an actual studio, and he's like, no, it has to be on the Val division.
Yeah.
And so this is the idea that, like, even if the show's budget won't reflect it, we do hear that it's become quite a big thing.
Absolutely. So Max and Val are asked if they're staying together, and Max says they are, and we see the 3 Vivaldi children react to that, and Candy Zeta thinks, oh yeah, you know, everything's going back to normal. But we see Maria and Leo, especially Leo, be a lot more skeptical and think, oh, it's all a performance for the camera.
Yeah. So
we've got these tensions within the family unit of, have Max and Val truly patched things together, and
certainly
is Val happy to go along with things?
Yeah.
Because Maria, I think it's Leo who points out to Candy that if she got up early enough in the morning, she'd notice that her dad was sleeping on the couch and not.
Yeah, I think Maria says that to Leo, to Candy, because Leo doesn't say anything, he just storms off. Yeah. And when he storms off, he then sort of confronts Gethin and says, hey, where's my money? You know, where's the 30 grand? And then Gethin snaps at him and is like, yap, yap, yap. He says, you yap like a woman. And it's like, which woman is this? Is this by any chance Gethin? Although actually before that, he's with Maria, and this old woman comes up to them. So he kind of says to Gethin, oh, did he get his stuff? And we don't really know what that means.
Yeah.
But Gethin is like trying to play it cool and be like, oh, yeah. And then she says hello again to Maria, and Maria's like, where do I know this woman? And Gethin is like, she must be at the bank. And then, but she knows me. And he's like, yeah, but everyone knows you because you're on TV. So he's been put on edge by the time Leo confronts him. And throughout the episode, we get these like, you know, like when someone's been like brainwashed and there's like an activation phrase and they're like unlocking their hidden memory or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
In stuff. It's basically that, these like weird flashbacks that Maria keeps getting. We keep seeing for like, she's trying to piece together where she's seen this old lady.
Do you know what? If whilst we're mentioning the flashbacks, they remind me of the flashbacks in the first 2005 series of Doctor Who. Like at the end of the series where we see every time Bad Wolf has cropped up, and it's sort of an image of the time vortex is sort of I don't know, it's the right word, sort of transposed over the flashbacks, giving it all sort of a blue tint.
Yeah.
I think we get kind of like the same blue tint here.
Yes, we do, yes.
So I feel like we're seeing the origin of those sort of early RTD Doctor Who flashbacks here.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It is.
Whilst all the characters are by the waterfront, it's important to note that Val asks Maria if she knows where Danny is, because a piece of post has arrived at the Vivaldi house, signed for Danny, and Val's like, well, you surely know where he is, and she says, no, he's just vanished. And this is where Val's put two and two together and realised the man Maria was talking about, the affair, was Danny.
Yes. Sorry, I realise I completely messed up the order of things. I said...
That's fine.
No, but where I said it is that, like, we get the lady saying hello to Geffen, and then Geffen snapping at Leo, and then Val asks Maria. But actually, first Val asks Maria, then Geffen snaps at Leo, and then the lady says hello to Geffen and Maria.
But dear listener, all these things are happening on the waterfront. This episode is kind of just... I would love to read the script.
Yes.
Because there's much of this that is just pure people running around and chaos happening. And this is only the start.
Yeah.
Yes, Maria now has in her possession a letter for Danny, but she doesn't know where Danny is, so she's probably just going to find a forwarding address and send it off to him in London, because that's where she presumes he is.
Yeah, I think watching this, I did wonder, like, what if there was this kind of chaos before episode 5? Sort of, what if episodes 2, the stuff that happens in episode 2, 3 and 4,
yeah,
by the end of episode 2, like, Max was in charge of a town and was, like, doing the Vivaldi and stuff. And then, of course, we can still have the romance plots and all the affairs and stuff play out at the same pace. But it just means that we get, like, 3 whole episodes of Max trying to run stuff before the election comes, you know. I think you're very right about all this chaos, but kind of enjoying seeing all the running around.
Moving away from the water side, we now, like I mentioned before, we see reporters hounding Sam the Eggman.
Yeah.
And he sort of rushes into his house without saying anything and sits on a chair in his hall whilst they shout through the postbox. And we see that he had in his hand a book on poisons.
Yes.
Dun.
He stares at it. He yearns for it.
Yes. And all of a sudden, the stakes surrounding... He's sort of been a very... Not an innocent character, but a character who... I was about to say, whose actions had little stakes. He was sort of technically a homewrecker, but he's never been a deadly force within the show. And now, all of a sudden...
Yes.
That's what he becomes.
Yeah.
But he's not the only deadly force, is he, Louis?
No, because we then cut straight to Val, who is now with her mum and auntie. She's basically saying, you need to kill Max, because if he dies before the vote happens, then the vote is void. It doesn't matter. So even if people vote Max out, it doesn't matter because there is no Max. And then it goes down to Leo, who they say he's sort of sensible, gay as a goose. And they're doing this while they're driving to go and see Val's mother. Ooh.
Father.
Sorry, Val's father. Ooh. She's already seen Val's mother. That's why she's in the car with her. Yeah, and that's where she says, you need to poison Max. I think they say that in Roman times, they would use poisoned figs. And so you could use a fig roll, which is quite funny.
It is, yeah.
Just imagine that, pushing that on Max, like being, hey, do you want this fig roll? He's like, no, not really. It's like, I really think you should eat this fig roll. It's like, look, if I want a fig roll, I'll have a fig roll.
I'm going to say, you couldn't poison me with fig rolls. I hate them.
Okay.
I hate them. No, forgive me. Forgive me if you think I'm reading too much into something here, but sort of this reference to ancient Roman poisoning. Throughout history, poisoning has been considered a very a female weapon, as it were, and then we see that in several Shakespeare plays, I believe, as well. This idea that a man kills with a sword, but a woman who, in a male chauvinist historical perspective, has domain over the kitchen and the house and the cooking, and therefore poison. So there's sort of this scene where... Yeah,
certainly.
Well, the aunt sort of mythologizes the history of the family as all the women poison the men. And Val, confesses to having poisoned her husband, Val's father, years before. leans into this idea of poison being a woman's weapon. I find it really interesting that the Eggman has, in the scene previous to this, has also been established as a potential poisoner.
Yeah.
Now, what's that telling us about the Eggman?
Well, he's literally called the Eggman, so...
Yes, wow, that's good. He just continues in a way to be emasculated. And there's a mic drop of a word.
Yeah. I mean, I guess because he is also a provider of food.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He has access to the kitchens of people. And also you think about a male provider of food is a hunter, is providing meat, whereas an egg from a chicken, that's not very... In the patriarchy, a man doesn't go out and get the eggs from the chicken coop. He goes out into the forest and wrestles a lion with his bare hands and brings home the hide.
Yeah. So anyway, sticking on the theme of violence, we now see how Gethin is inflicting violence upon others. This is the violence special. It is.
It really is.
Yeah. So Danny is not dead. We weren't sure if he was dead at the end of the last episode. He is fine, but he is tied up with tape across his mouth in the hideaway house. This is the secret house that only Gethin and Maria sort of knew about, and where they would go to sort of get away from it all. And then, of course, Danny knew about it when Maria took him there. And so this is now a location that only those three characters know about, and one of them is tied up there, and the other one is tying him up. He comes in, and, what's scarier than, a competent kidnapper is an incompetent kidnapper, because they might, accidentally kill you. And, Gethin gives that energy, because he comes in and he's like, look, okay, I've never done this before. Here's some food. I was thinking we could do, sort of chicken drumsticks. I could just hold it. You could just eat it like corn on the cob, because his hands are tied behind his back. I've never done this before. He's like, hey, I've never bought rope. And then I was like, do the police check who's buying too much rope? So I drove all the way to Llanelli to get the rope. There's loads of types of rope, and that's not even including nylon. And Danny is like, can we stop talking about rope?
I don't know if it's scary. I think it's not to... I've already used the word emasculate once in this episode, so I won't do it again, but it's sort of the fact that Danny is able to continue to be kidnapped by someone so incompetent, I think is a reflection on him. That he hasn't been able to escape the clutches of Gethin.
I mean, I don't know, how easy is it to untie knots over the course of, let's say, an entire night, let's say an entire 8 hours?
Yeah.
If you've never done it before, because can he reach and just sort of slowly pry him open or what?
It's something just really unique that I can't get out of my head. There's almost a reverse Stockholm syndrome, in the sense that Gethin's like, when he mentions the chicken drumsticks, it's almost like he wants to eat with Danny. It's giving...
He doesn't want to think that he's doing anything too violent.
Yeah.
He's like, you're my guest.
He even brings in a TV.
Yes.
For Danny, which I sat there and was like, and this is me being really cynical towards the script writing. Is there a good in-character reason? Would Gethin really go to the trouble of setting up a TV so that Danny can watch Vivaldi Vision whilst kidnapped, or is it so that he can see the later events of the episode unfolding?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not very defensible there. I think sort of back then, a battery powered TV like that is not gonna be easy to, because I'm pretty sure, because the place doesn't have electricity. They established earlier on,
because there was the thing about the coffee. Yeah,
Maria took a thermos. Yeah,
yes,
because the kettle didn't work. Yeah, so that is quite the purchase. Yeah,
gosh, imagine TVs being battery operated.
But anyway, whilst Gethin is there, he also tells Danny his plan to basically steal millions from the town by getting Max to sign some paperwork. Then when Max has signed it, he can then run off and disappear, because he was just going to steal 70 grand and get out of there. But now with Danny knowing about it, he has to really go off the grid, and that is expensive.
Yeah.
And Danny is like, you're going to disgrace Max. And then he says, well, Max is going to lose anyway, the vote. And he's like, well, yeah, then he'll be disgraced with nothing. That's worse.
Yeah, it's weird here that Danny tries to appeal to Gethin's humanity. Well, I mean, maybe it makes sense because we've just described how Gethin seems oddly nice, but then his big master plan, he's not going to feel for Max.
No, I mean, I think Gethin only ever wants to wash his own hands of blood, right? And by that is to sort of frame what he's doing as not too bad, even when it is. So he doesn't really care about Max.
Meanwhile, our other characters are getting ready for the big TV debate on Vivaldi Vision. It really does feel like political election season. Interesting, though, because as you mentioned before, so Stella's here because she's helping the Max Out campaign. And technically, because it's the election, the laws of her banishment don't apply.
She's there, she's randomly speaking French. she's part of this.
It's interesting that the election is allowed to happen on Vivaldi Vision. Now, Max makes the point that it should be on Swansea's own TV station, which is, in this context, Vivaldi Vision. But surely Vivaldi Vision is sort of funded and operated by the Vivaldi, so surely it's biased in a political contest like this. It reminds me of another RTD program, which we'll get to in Years and Years. Emma Thompson's character, Vivian Rook?
Yeah.
Her name, yes. Vivian Rook has her own television channel, and she only agrees to appear on her own television channel.
Yeah.
Because if you have your own TV channel, you can use it to manipulate narratives.
No, certainly. Well, what I will say is that I think during, I think it must have been the 2019 election, the Conservative Party sort of changed their Twitter name to like Fact Check Central or something.
Yeah.
And there were zero repercussions. So, this is a formal call out to Ofcom. Ofcom don't do shit. They wouldn't do shit. They don't do shit in this show. They don't do shit in Years and Years. And as an accurate representation of how they approach political bias.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I wonder if, though, because obviously Years and Years, which obviously we will get to having this discussion, exists specifically in the context of the post-truth the post-truth era and the political shake-ups that the country's seen from circa 2016 and before. Whereas I think Mine or Mine in its little 2003, and not to say that the early 2000s weren't interestingly politically, you definitely couldn't say that, but I think in terms of not quite the same in terms of mainstream media manipulation, I don't know. I was 3 at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely talk about New Labour and stuff, because I think in an earlier episode, Stella said to Max, New Labour was a pack of lies. It looks like New Swansea will be as well. And in this episode, we'll get to a line that's said after the debate, which is the least subtle thing he has ever written, and we're talking about RTD here. I know writers who use subtext, they're all cowards.
So yeah, everyone's getting ready for the debate, and Val comes back home from her gallivanting in the graveyard with her mother, and Max asks her for a cup of tea.
He says, "I'll have a cup of tea, thanks."
Yeah, I felt uncomfortable. And I did sit there and go, oh, but what would I do in that scenario if I wanted a cup of tea? Would I go and make one myself?
Yeah, if you're setting up for debate.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you could ask like one of your kids, right?
Yeah.
One of the people who's already there and is already part of the crew and is already like making this happen, and not the person who has just come back.
So if there were a proper TV program, they'd have underpaid runners to go and make the tea.
Certainly, yes.
So you can see how Vivaldi Vision ain't that legit.
No. But yeah, the fact that like when he sees his wife come home, he doesn't think my wife. He thinks cup of tea, thanks. Right.
He probably does think Borat my wife, given that Borat is a raging misogynist.
Yes.
But this is exactly the spark that Val needs to continue to ponder the suggestion her mother has made.
Well, no, but it's weird because she goes to the kitchen and she actually puts the poison in a bin.
Yeah.
And she only takes it out when Leo comes in and refuses to talk to her. But she like takes out the bin and puts it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Which I found was very interesting touch.
Yeah, it's fantastic bit of inner conflict for Val here. It would have been so easy to just make her spiteful, but she's sort of toing and throwing between her very nuanced feelings towards her husband, but also the fact that taking a life is not a small decision. It's not a small action for, I suppose, a normal person like Val.
No, certainly not. But the fact that she's keeping it in her inventory.
Yeah, I think a person who's pushed to the edge can play with the ideas, and I think the bottle of poison on the shelf is very much entertaining a possibility. And I think maybe me and Val are just psychopaths, but I think maybe entertaining a sort of a fantasy of reality where, you know, you might be pushed over the edge is very different to actually doing something.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think,
No, I think that's
it's
fair.
interesting.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say is I've never had poison I've never put poison on my shelf.
Okay. Good. Let's get that on the record. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of poison, and I can't believe that I keep getting to say speaking of poison because there are like two separate B-plots both about this. During the debate, we see Sam injecting the eggs with this like kind of what looks like kind of a thick orange liquid that he has in a wine glass.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sort of takes a syringe, pulls it out, and then just injects it into a bunch of eggs. I gotta say, it looks like Aperol. Like, is he just making the eggs taste of Germany's favourite liqueur? Like, what is this, you know?
Maybe he is. It's implied, and we're supposed to infer that it's poison, but who actually knows? He could be doing a special secret boozy egg recipe.
Yeah, could just be a hallucinogen.
Or it's a love potion.
These eggs will get you fucked up, man.
It's a special love potion.
Yes.
Yeah, and he does, it's quite an interesting little procedure he does, because he injects the eggs and then covers the tip of the egg.
Or the hole that he's made with the syringe.
With Tipp-Ex. Because I did think surely you've got to have delicate hands to syringe an egg, because someone surely would notice that hole. And when he puts them back in the thing, because they're not all perfectly white eggs, because newsflash, not all eggs are perfectly white, and there's more diversity in the egg community than you'd think. You can blatantly see the little bits of Tipp-Ex, but spoiler alert, no one else notices.
Yeah.
Only I did, or the viewer does.
Well, yeah, because who is out here injecting eggs with Aperol?
Well, that's true, but I suppose again we live in a world where you read stories of, you know, Uber drivers never accept a water bottle off an Uber driver because supposedly there was an endemic of water bottles being spiked using syringes through the lid. You know, you might think it's a sealed water bottle, but there might be a microscopic hole in the lid. Wow.
Okay. Yeah, I guess also because it's plastic, you can just melt it a bit and then it's okay.
I'm also, whilst we're on the topic of poison, sorry, no, I'm not obsessed, but it's interesting that you say how many times we say it in one episode. From a script writing perspective, and here's just a question, is it lazy to have these two subplots that both revolve around poison, to sort of go, oh gosh, I want there to be two different levels of lethal threat in this show.
I guess
I'll just let it be the same.
There should be a payoff, like maybe the concurrent poison things are proof that Val and Sam are meant for each other, you know.
And the idea we mentioned earlier about these feminine connotations, the historically feminine connotations applying to the Eggman. But I don't feel like the show does, and it tries to avoid the fact that it seems to be repeating itself.
Yeah.
Although when we get to the end, it kind of makes sense why it has to be poison and no other lethal force. But we'll get there.
Anyway, back in the debate. So Iris has basically done a speech of like, hey everyone, you know, under Max, this is a dictatorship. And even if he means well, a benign dictatorship is still a dictatorship. And also, you know, he has messed quite a few things up. And plus, it's tearing you apart being in the spotlight, Max. So, you know, you should also want to have the control relinquished so you can go back to focusing on your family or whatever. That's her shtick. Max says, you know, hey everyone, I messed up. And then explains about all the weird stuff that's happened with his family. And then he says, like, I'm sorry, Val, and everyone else. So you really... This is the thing, is in politics, people like a wife guy. You know, if you can show that you love your wife, people will be down for that. And so him saying Val and everyone else, it's like, oh wow, this guy loves his wife. You know, we can trust him, kind of.
Yeah, it's, again, to make links between... Because this episode is sort of pseudo-political, to make links between sort of the time when Years and Years came out, which is not pseudo-political, it's explicitly political. There's something about the fact that politicians never admit where they're wrong. And again, looking at the last couple of years of our own political history, we've seen politicians expertly go onto television and avoid answering a single question and managing to avoid talking about things wrong. That I think it is in this episode, the fact that Max apologizes and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my God, that was the best thing to have ever happened, is absurd.
Yeah.
And the fact that we see the approval ratings experience a seismic shift
to be like 50-50,
yeah, is crazy. But I think that's the point, obviously.
Yeah, no, certainly. But the thing is, I think in his speech, he at one point referred to himself as like the Prime Minister of Swansea.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, like everyone's saying, "Wow, do you see what happened? The Prime Minister apologised." And before this point, there'd never been any mention of Max as a Prime Minister analogue. That had never happened.
Yeah.
The closest was Stella sort of comparing New Swansea to New Labour, but even that is not quite the same because, they're both projects, and that doesn't mean that people at top of them are the same. And so this is like the first time that there's any kind of comparison between the Prime Minister and Max.
Yeah.
And then suddenly everyone's like, wow, the Prime Minister apologized. Isn't it mad that the Prime Minister, apologized? The Prime Minister, that would never happen in the Prime Minister land.
Yeah.
And as I say, unsubtle even by RTD standards.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, the early 2000s were not uninteresting politically.
Yeah. One thing to notice is during this, we do get the cutaways to like everyone watching the debate from wherever they are.
Yeah.
And Val's mum and auntie are watching the debate together. And so, like, they are sisters or they are lovers. There is no other option at this point, I think.
I think it's implied. I think they're supposed to be sisters at this point. I think it's implied that they're both part of the same family, and it's because they talk about this tradition, so I think they must be sisters.
Yeah, must be. But just people who watch the debate together stay together,
Exactly. I also, just to briefly mention, to talk about Iris. Iris clearly doesn't read enough Plato, because she believes in democracy over dictatorship.
Yeah.
SMH.
She's more... Who was, screw this guy about Plato?
I think everyone after Aristotle.
Okay, she's everyone after Aristotle.
No, that's not true.
Because I think Diogenes was slagging off Aristotle, right? That was...
Probably.
Behold a man holding up a chicken, a plucked chicken. That was...
Yes, that's making fun of Aristotle's sort of categories. Yeah.
Aristotle, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Honestly, Diogenes, absolute queer icon, taking down gender essentialism one chicken at a time. So after the debate, Val says to Max that if she is to stay, Max must stop punishing her. And this is because Val's mum had said that basically after this affair, now every day is punishment. Every time Max looks at you a certain way, or like is apprehensive about you doing something, that's punishment. This idea that her guilt for the affair will bear over her for the rest of her life and always put her at a sort of... mean that he will always have this kind of moral high ground that he can wield against her. That's this idea. And so they're saying you should poison Max because otherwise your life will be that. Your life will be this punishment. And so Val is like, I'm going to confront Max and then I don't need to poison him. And so she's like, well, firstly, she's like, did you mean everything you said in the debate? And he's like, yes, absolutely. And so she's like, okay, so don't punish me now. You need to not punish me. And not even with your eyes. You must promise that you won't look at me any certain way, that we can actually put this behind us. Quite a compelling little scene, a little idea, I think.
Yeah, and sort of interrogating this idea that was what Max said on the telly just political rhetoric, or did it come from the heart? And I still think it, even though he answers the question and says what he said was real and he didn't just say it to win the election, part of me is a little bit skeptical.
Yeah.
If that's all right to admit.
No, yeah, I mean, certainly it's sort of... You can't say it didn't help him, so it's like...
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, you can't.
Now, it's nighttime, and Maria finally remembers where she saw this old lady that's been sort of giving her, like, Manchurian candidate flashbacks, her activation phrase. She remembers that the lady was Danny's landlord when he was staying in like a B&B. He was staying under her roof. And so she races over to her at night and is like, look, can I come in? And she's like, oh no canvassing. And she's like, no, I'm not canvassing. I need to ask you about Danny. And so eventually she finds out that from this lady that Danny left his stuff. Then a few days later, or the next day or whatever, Gethin came and said, oh, Danny had to run back to London for an emergency. I'm here to take his stuff. And, you know, he pays her double. And so Maria realizes that, oh my God, like Gethin is responsible for Danny's disappearance. And then she's like, is he a murderer? Oh my God. Time's running out for Gethin because Maria has figured it out.
I like the fact that Maria's brain jumps to murder, because we will remember part of the cliffhanger of last time's episode was when Danny got that thwonk to the back of the head. Was he knocked out? Was he unconscious, or was he dead? I think that was intentional. That possibility to stew in our minds that maybe he's dead, and that we're reminded of that here. Even though at this point there's dramatic irony in that we know he's alive and, well, I say alive and well, alive and having been kidnapped, but Maria is still where we were at the end of the last episode.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, who kidnaps people nowadays, right? Anyway, it's the next morning and it's voting day, and so Max is waking up everyone saying, hey, go out and vote. Big Claire's there because apparently she got like fired from a job at the bakery and couldn't pay rent.
Yeah.
Max is like, what? No, never mind. I do like it whenever you sort of lampshade the idea that the world is bigger than just what we're seeing on screen.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Leo goes downstairs and realizes that the fridge, the freezer is warm. It's been turned off. And so he goes out to like one of his tech guys and is like, did you unplug the fridge? Oh, you got to leave all the stuff to me. Now we get this is a gross scene. So basically what Leo does is he has like a pack of thawed burgers and he just like tries to stuff them back in and put it in and then put it back in the fridge. Now it's been turned back on, or in the freezer. Meanwhile, on the radio behind this scene, we hear about this like product recall for like some brand of ham that's just also there. At this point, it's quite a random, inconsequential scene because it's like it's just adding to the texture of like everything's chaotic in the Vivaldi household, but also like the fridge wasn't important before this, so it's quite sudden.
But at the same time, in the corner of the stage, Chekhov cocks his gun.
Yes.
Yeah. So after that sort of banal scene, we get back to what we think is the more important action. Where Maria has woken up in the morning and she says to Gethin, do you love me? Do you really love me? And she's got a knife from the kitchen underneath the table because she's now suspecting that her fiance might be a murderer. And he says, oh yeah, he sort of shakes off. And then he says, oh, I've actually been thinking about how much I love you. And I just, wanted to say, if anything happens to me whilst I'm out today, how nice, this has been. And,
we've had a laugh.
I could have done a lot worse than you.
He mocks her question. He's like, he sort of does the like, sarcastic, oh, it's been all right, to sort of imply that, oh, actually, I do love you without ever actually saying it. And of course, because I think at this point, he's going to abandon her. It's sort of a way to kind of shut down her fears without technically lying. I don't know, being sardonic but disguising it as sarcasm, the sort of reverse of like, oh no, I didn't lie, you just thought I was being sarcastic. Yes.
But I do think he's taking this opportunity because I think today is the day that he's gonna skedaddle and leave Swansea once he needs to get Max to sign over the millions and then he can run away. And he can say goodbye to Maria. Now, Maria has completely got the wrong end of the stick, as will become explicit very soon, because she's obviously asking, how much do you love me? Because she thinks Gethin might have gone and done some terrible things out of love for her.
Yes, it's funny how she sort of has her own narrative in her head.
Yes.
And so she's not spotting that Gethin is not about that. She thinks that he's trying to downplay it because actually he's a bit obsessed with her.
And we all think we're the main characters in our heads. But she then, as Gethin's getting his keys, remembers, and I don't think this is not a flashback to something we've actually seen.
No, it's not, no.
That Gethin took the keys to the house, obviously, that we know he's hiding Danny kidnapped in.
Yeah.
But that was her hideaway home, and he said to her that ever since the Vivaldis came into the spotlight, she can't be seen to be having this house that's
abusing her powers, kind of.
Yeah.
So he has to hold on to the house.
So she's sort of putting two and two together. So runs to work to the estate agent and gets the master key and goes to find what's there.
Yeah. Races away to the hideaway house. Yeah. Now, meanwhile, Mrs. Digby gives Candy a big envelope of cash and is like, this is £3,000. I've taken my 1% in song royalties because this story has been on the news, and every time it's been on the news, they've played Candy's song because, you know, she's Vivaldi. And so because of that, she's gotten all these song royalties. And she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. £3,000.
If Mrs. Digby took her 1%, are you telling me she took 30 quid?
Yes.
That's pretty abysmal.
No, yeah. I did think like 3,000, which is going to be about 5,000 in today's money.
Yeah.
I'll look it up in a second. It's about 5,772 today. So over $5,500. That's not nothing. That's certainly not nothing. But it's not quite the 30 grand that Leo is entitled to.
No. But I think for Candy's Eater, that's a lot of money. I just think for all the work that Mrs. Digby is supposedly putting into guiding Candy and also putting up with Candy's Eater, 30 quid doesn't seem like very much, I'm afraid.
No, it's...
Poor thing.
It's because she loves Candy.
Yeah, it's true. We find out that Candy doesn't have a bank account. Candy's dad won't let her have a bank account. So she just ends up putting all the cash in a drawer in the front room, and they have to run out. But Big Claire says she has
yet to vote. So
we see her eyeing up that drawer. So we already know what's going to happen with her.
Yeah, I remember in the director's commentary, RTD saying that, you know, at the end of the day, Claire is a really good friend to Candy. You know, even though they have their sort of disputes and stuff, she's a really good friend to Candy. She massively betrays Candy in this episode. Like, I don't know where he's getting that idea from. It's like, my man, you wrote the character to do these things, you know.
Because it's already been established in this episode that Claire loses her job in the bakery, you can kind of see that she's not having success with money.
No.
But then also the conflict between Mrs. Digby and Claire and who is the better manager for Candy. And even if RTD thinks that Claire's a good friend to Candy, I don't think Candy's a good friend for Claire because she can't make a promise and stick to it. She's so driven by what's in front of her face.
Yeah.
Claire's in financial need. She sees an opportunity and she'll take it.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately.
Anyway, Maria races now to the hideaway house and she finds Danny tied up, and she's like, this is brilliant. And she's saying, obviously this sucks for you, but look at it from my perspective. He loves me so much that he would go to these extremes to keep me all to himself. This is great. And then she's like, I'm not going to take the tape off just yet because I just need to say all of this stuff. But because she unties his hands first, eventually Danny like rips off a tape and is like, this is not about you. And then it just cuts to them like yelling in the car, like slagging off Gethin, and then eventually slagging off each other, like saying, this is your fault, whatever.
They're such an old married couple.
Yeah, absolutely. And now they're racing to, get to the house before anything is signed. Also trying to phone the house to warn everyone. It's great. Danny says that he can't get any signal because this stupid town is all hills. I relate to that.
We're really getting to the point where Danny is sick and tired of Welsh people and Wales, and that's bubbling and it's about to burst. But yeah, it's important that Danny's trying to phone the Vivaldi house to say to Max, don't sign anything. If Gethin tries to get you to sign anything, don't sign it. And Gethin has already failed to get Max to sign something this morning. So now hears that and goes, okay, I've got to get to Max right now and get him to sign it. Or has that already happened?
So he keeps trying to get Max to sign the papers, but they keep being a bit too busy with other stuff, and so it keeps being, oh, let's have to wait till later and later and later. I think eventually he does get Max to sign just before Danny and Maria rock up in their car.
Yeah.
That is a point of tension throughout the morning, but, you know, will they sign it or will they get stopped in time, you know?
Yeah. But he does get it signed.
At the same time, Claire steals the money from Candy, right? And as she's running out the house, Gethin is running into the house, and they bump into each other. They say, like, good luck. Yeah, good luck to you too, which I thought was such a funny little detail. They're both, you know, betraying the family. They can both tell that's what the other one is doing, but they don't have time to figure out exactly how they're doing it. They just good luck, you two. And then she, like, jumps into a taxi and is like, get me to the station. Like, to leave Swansea forever just on, like, £3,000, like, I don't think that's a lot of money to suddenly upend your life for.
True, but I think for the characters of Candy and Claire, given both their age and their class status, so that's a lot of money, you know, and the fact that it's in cash and that you could literally hold that much money in your hands, I think is insane to them.
Yeah, true.
And you could well, not very easily, but you could go and find somewhere and rent somewhere, and if you could find a new job pretty quickly. Yeah, I think in the world of fiction, you can run away with £3,000.
Then after this, Marie and Danny arrive, jump out of the car, and Gethin is like coming out the house of Valdi. It's like, okay, fine, you got me, you got here in time. I could give you money. Do you want money? I could give you $500,000. Is that good? And this kind of breaks Danny. This is where he finally snaps, and he, like, starts monologuing about the Welsh and how, like, he comes to this town and all of this crazy stuff happens to him. He gets, like, attacked, and then he gets kidnapped, and now he's getting bribed. He's getting offered money. Then he says, and I'm only saying all of this so that it can help me when I'm in court being defended against a murder charge. And then he, like, grabs an axe and just starts chasing Gethin. And Maria is like, oh my God. But I think she's also like, wow, he really loves me, you know. But also she's like, oh my God, yeah.
And thus starts, you know, absolute crazy farcical chase sequence where we get Danny chasing Gethin on foot through the back of houses. It turns out that Leo has hooked up all the CCTVs to a Valdi Vision, so they're able to watch them running down the streets.
Yes, and Maria is controlling all the taxis with her radio and using that to get them to follow them, and including the one Claire is in. That is now no longer going to the station.
It's now chasing them. Interesting detail during this chase sequence. So Maria, when she's calling all the taxis, she names different roads that Danny and Gethin are chasing down. One of those roads, if I heard it correctly, is Minto Road. Minto Road seems to be Russell T Davies' favourite street name because it appears in the finale of Series 1, 2005 of Doctor Who, where Mickey tells Jackie there's a new pizza place opening up on Minto Road. And Jackie asks, what do they do? And he says pizza. But also, the actual Minto Road within the universe appears in Season 1, 2024. Who lives on Minto Road? Do you recall?
Ruby Sunday,
yeah, and the Sunday family and Mrs. Flood all live on Minto Road. And supposedly,
I guess that would have to be a different Minto Road, because one is in Notting Hill, the other is in southeast London.
Yeah,
so.
Unless of course there's really, really good delivery from the pizza place on Minto Road. But yeah, it's definitely a different Minto Road to the one in Mine on Mine, because this one is in Swansea.
Yeah,
supposedly.
This whole crazy sequence of events accidentally messes up Claire's plan.
Yes.
Also, when Val calls and is like, what's going on, Maria? And she says, like, you know, Danny is chasing Gethin with an axe. And then Max is like, what's that? And Val just says, boyfriend trouble, she'll never be happy. So Danny and Gethin arrive at the waterfront where the stage is, and Candy is there. And so she's like telling the crowd, hey, stop that man, stop Geffen, he has stolen your money. And then turns out she's on the phone with Maria, who's like, what do I say next? And then Maria's like, oh, apprehend him. She's like, apprehend him. People just about figure out what she's trying to say, and so he does get stopped. And then all the taxis pull in, and at this point Claire gets out, and like no one knew that this was her plan, but because Mrs. Digby is there, she gets out and just gives up and just like, here's your money, you psychic.
Mrs. Digby is confused, is very confused. At this point, Gethin threatens to throw, because he has the original will on him, having got it from the bank. Yes,
or actually, no, wait, I should say, speaking of stealing money, cut to Geffen.
He threatens to throw the original will back into the sea, because supposedly it's needed in case someone wants to dispute the Vivaldi inheritance. And there's this beautiful moment, it's really well directed, where Danny says, mate, the tide's out, and the camera angle cuts, because before we couldn't see the tide in the original shot, and it cuts to a cut of Gethin where you can clearly see he stood at the seafront and he's just next to like the shingle beach.
It's like the tide's out, and then he says, and also I don't think the will thing is true now. Since episode 2 it's been like verified by lawyers, so there's not really any challenge to be made.
So he gives up and is arrested.
Oh, by the way, during all the axe chaos, Danny did cut down the door, beat down the door with his axe, which means that now the Vivaldi house has no door, and so Sam quietly just walks in. He sees all the carnage and is like, don't know what this is, but he walks in and he deposits the eggs into the fridge and then just walks out. And it's interesting because, okay, so I'm thinking like, so Val has some poison, Sam has some poison, but also Leo refroze the defrosted burgers, which is gross, but also now Danny cut down the door which let Sam in. How many people are not taking their security and food safety properly? You know, we're up to 4.
My question is, comparatively, is refrozen thawed meat as poisonous as poison?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's yeah.
But we'll get onto this. I'll explain my theorizing about this at the end, yeah.
But yeah, so the poison eggs are in the fridge. So the stakes are still, so there's still stakes, there's still threat.
Yes, no, definitely. We've had the day conclusion, but now it's time for the night denouement.
Yes.
We're into our kind of final act, because after Sandy's house, we like cut straight to night. Like nothing else happens before the vote ends, basically. I remember that when Gethin was like being arrested, he said, look at this, Vivaldi signed away all your money. And like, when I saw that, I thought, okay, but like, even if Gethin is obviously evil, how are they going to win after this? Because like, clearly these people cannot read contracts, and like, that is serious, you know. But we'll get on to whether that actually ruins their chances at the election in the evening. Because also the other thing is that, oh, well, you know, we've stopped this criminal. Look at how cool we are, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is now nighttime.
Everyone's at the Vivaldi house.
Yes. So there's a big party welcoming the results, whatever it may be. At this point, Maria gives Danny the letter. So a letter had come for Danny earlier. I think Val must have given it to Maria when she asked if she knew where Danny was. And so she says, I have this letter for you. And they're wondering, are we together? Do you want me to ask you out? Yada, yada, yada. And so she says, I have this letter. I can give it to you now, or I can forward it to London if you're going back to London. And he sort of grabs the letter and pulls her in, and they kiss. Whoa. So romantic.
Woohoo, the guy got the girl. The happy ending happened.
Yes.
And that's where the show ends, guys. See you later.
Yes, lovely. Anyway, first episode of Series 2 of Mine or Mine. We're inside the house at the party. Val's mum and auntie say that, hey, you're running out of time. Okay, you need to poison him before the result comes in. Okay, well, before the vote closes or whatever. Otherwise, it's all going to go bad. Time is running out. And so she kind of stands up to her mum and auntie and says, you know what, you've been telling me what to do all my life. I am not going to kill my husband. Which, surprising, there's a debate around this, but here we are, you know.
Yeah.
Like the centre-left wing perspective of we should not kill our husband versus kind of... but for balance, we've brought in this far murder advocate to give us another opinion on this issue, you know.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting. It's not a conclusion because it's not concluded yet, but feels like it is going to be the conclusion for Val, in that obviously her relationship with her husband is complicated in that I don't think he treats her properly.
Yeah.
Obviously part of that's her own doing, but then also it's sort of there's a feminist lens of her mother and her aunt want her to sort of follow this tradition of the females in the family, and she's sort of stuck between these two positions, neither of which are good, and in the end it's about taking her own agency.
Well, exactly.
And rejecting what her parents tell her to do.
Exactly. I was going to say, but what this means is that now if she poisons Max, it'll be because she wants to.
Yes.
And not because anyone's telling her to.
Exactly.
I'm poisoning my husband, but not because you told me to, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Mum?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then Claire comes in and says that, you know, the pizza shop is closed, chip shop is closed, everywhere is closed because they're all going down to see the result unveiled. And so now people realise that, you know, I'm starving, there's no, we need to eat something, I haven't eaten all day. Leo says this to Val, and Val is like, oh, now you're talking to me. And then he's like, yeah, but, you know, and she's like, no, don't worry. It's like, I'm your mum. I got to keep you fed, which I thought was a cute little moment.
Yeah.
That sort of at the end of the day, you know, Leo can't stay mad at Val forever because, you know, because he is her baby boy. And she gives him a kiss, and then it's like, no, it was a cute moment. About to be undercut by the dinner itself, but a cute moment.
But it's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be setting up this supposed conclusion for Val settling into family life again and everyone moving on.
Yeah, and then Stella shows up. She comes to the house and is like, bonjour, mon frère, all that stuff. And she says, hey, Max, I've come from the town hall where they're voting, they're counting up the votes. They're on their like second recounts because it's so close. But, you know, ultimately the vote did come in with 51%. He's like, Max in or Max out? And she tells him, but we don't know what she says because it cuts away. Now, back to the fridge, the lovely, safe, harmless fridge. Candy pulls out the burgers from earlier and the eggs. And then Val tells Maria you can just make some mayonnaise because, you know, they don't have any in the fridge. So Maria's like, how do I make mayonnaise? And then I think Val is like, what do they teach you in school or whatever? You just you mix egg yolks and olive oil. Love that. Love a good homemade mayonnaise. Love a good eggs Benedict hollandaise. I'm wondering what the difference between hollandaise and like homemade mayonnaise is, because you can never make the mayonnaise look like the stuff you buy in a jar, right?
I never made my own mayonnaise.
Okay,
according to Google, hollandaise is warm and uses butter instead of oil.
Oh, okay. There we go. So mixing with oil, that is a mayonnaise.
Yeah, the more you know. You learn something.
Yeah.
And on the subject of poisoned eggs.
Speaking of poison,
we cut we've got all these scenes in the Vivaldi house. We cut outside the Vivaldi house to the Eggman sat in his house with an egg. And he just puts the egg in his mouth and bites down.
And it's like, my man, you have the Aperol Spritz liquid. You can just drink the poison. Like, if you bite down on an egg, you're just going to be like, there's loads of shell and like yolk and stuff. And just and then he's not even going to swallow it, you know?
I originally thought he was putting a hard-boiled egg in his mouth. But then there's a crunch. Because he picks it up and puts it in, like, you know how some people will eat a hard-boiled egg in one go.
Yeah.
It's not the most sightly thing in the world.
It's like the reverse of that bit from Aeroplane.
Yeah.
Where the woman, an egg comes out of her mouth.
I have seen Aeroplane, and that is a film I have seen.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so we were reminded that these eggs are poisonous, and we see someone eat an egg, and now we're going to have poisonous mayo.
Now, upstairs at the Vivaldi house, Max tells Val that the vote has come in, it's 51%, and so she's like, Max in or Max out? And he's like, Max in. And so it's like, oh wow, they've won the election. And of course, was Stella lying to Max? Would she give him false hope like this just to rip it away? Maybe not. I don't know if she would be that spiteful, so maybe he has actually won. But this idea that we hear that Max has won, but technically we don't know.
So are you asking if Max would have lied.
No. Would Stella have lied to Max? Because Stella told Max...
Oh, Stella have lied.
There's 51% Max in. Would she lie about this?
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. Wow. Ooh, I don't know. But if it's gonna, what would be the point in lying?
Well, as I say, just to give him a bit of false hope, just to rip it away.
Because she says technically they are doing a recount, so...
There are recounts, yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, Max says that, but that doesn't even matter because now I am going to dedicate myself to you, Val. I'm going to love you. I'm going to be the best husband. He says, I want us to grow old together. And that gives Val this powerful sense of dread and prompts the music to sort of cut down, and everyone else's talking goes all muffled because Val now is like, I have to kill my husband.
Yeah.
When she walked into the bedroom, she was saying to Max, I found a minute steak back of the freezer. Do you want it or should I give it to Leo? And so now she walks down and she just pours poison all over that minute steak.
Yeah.
The question I have is, would the poison stay poisony if it was cooked? You know what I mean? Is it like alcohol? Like you cook with alcohol, it burns off. Does the poison burn off? Is it still going to poison Max?
Well, I suppose that's a question. That's a question, a valid question. I imagined she was marinating the steak in the poison, so it's all juiced into the steak.
Yeah. So
it survives the cooking process.
The alcohol will be inside the thing, but it still burns off.
I don't know. And I suppose this is a very valid question.
I mean, I think if a poison is potent enough, it's like messes up your insides. And also I think because a lot of poisons are like metals and things like that, stuff that wouldn't be affected by cooking.
Right.
The way that a hydrocarbon is.
You heard it here first, Kiss. Yeah.
GCSE chemistry in it. And so as we say, Val is killing her husband, but not because her mum told her. Now, Danny opens this letter that Maria has given her, and he finds out that basically this letter was about Danny doing a bit more reading, a bit more meddling, and he found out that Owen Cadwallader's father, so Owen Cadwallader being the one who owned Swansea and then died, and now Max has finally reclaimed Swansea. His father remarried a Dutch woman and went to, North America and bought a plot of land, and then when he died, that wasn't claimed, yada, yada, yada. The moment he said, Dutch woman, I thought, oh, is it New York? It's New York, right? It's New York, isn't it? It's New York. Then he says Manhattan. I was like, yeah, okay, it's New York. Yeah.
This is a reference to the real life story that inspires Mine or Mine, the Welsh pirate Robert Edwards and his descendants who claimed
absolutely,
they owned Lower Manhattan.
Although I imagine this wouldn't hold up. The laws would be different in America, and especially once it became an independent country, they would not give a crap about some pre-independence Welsh guy. Like,
and you may think that this is setting up a potential
sequel,
second season.
Yeah.
Maria takes the document and rips it up. And goes.
She sort of looks over at Max and is like, she shivers. She's like, no.
This family's been through more than enough with this Welsh little town. We're not doing the same.
Yeah, and now that brings us to the final moment of this TV show. So, Val lays the table and she puts down some cold ham. It's like every time she puts down a food, it like does a close-up on the food. Like, here's some cold ham from earlier. And now, and we've got the burgers, and they look a bit disgusting. And there's like a close-up of them, And then she says some salad, and we don't zoom in on the salad. The salad is fine. If you're vegan, you're surviving this. Some fresh mayonnaise, and then it's like the bowl of mayonnaise that Maria has made. And a minute steak for you, Max. And then it's like, we zoom in even on like Max's very own personal steak. And then Danny is like, I think we should toast to Swansea. And then Max toasts to Barbara. Saying, I own this town, I can do whatever I want. At that point, Val smirks. Because she's like, yes, this is the Max I'm killing. You have to kill the Max in you that cringes, you know what I mean? Or actually, in this case, she's killing the Max that is cringe. I should mention, Iris is also there. So a bit earlier, she's like having a drink with Max, or holding her drink with Max in the living room and saying, I'm not officially here, but she wanted to come just because, she's grown to love the quirky but eccentric family. her life has become intertwined with. That means that we have the family, the household, plus Max's sister Stella, and Val's mum and auntie, and Big Claire, and Candy's manager, Mrs. Digby, and Iris. And they're all at the table. They all like start tucking in, being, hey, can you pass me the burgers? Can you pass me the ham? Yada, yada, yada. As we kind of zoom out of the living room, and there's this very wonderful, warm, uplifting music playing. When we leave the house, we sort of pan up and we see these fireworks bursting across Swansea. Like, someone didn't get the memo that, like, this isn't a warm ending, right?
Yeah. I think we need to unpack what this ending is implying.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, it looks like we've got a poison steak, we've got poison mayonnaise, and we've got this sort of deadly ham
and off
meat
burgers that are gonna give you the shits, at least, you know.
But let's break all this down. So it's kind of implied to us that we're the entire Vivaldi clan plus the Eggman are all about to snuff it, and that's what we don't see at the end of this show. But okay, number one, when products get recalled, who's to know? You know, if everything's affected and what actually are the extents of, maybe they just get food poisoning. Same thing with those burgers. I don't think it's unlikely, unless someone's got a very weak constitution, that some thawed, refrozen burgers are gonna be the death of you. The Eggman's poison was from that book of, you know, natural occurring poisons. We don't know the efficiency, if there's going to be enough poison in the mayo, because also you don't eat that much mayo, do you?
It's only yolks, and based on how big the syringe was, he was only injecting into the whites.
Exactly. The only other thing that maybe has a little bit more credibility is the steak that Max eats. We have the steak, and we only have Val's mum's word for the fact that the poison was poison, and maybe it's all one big joke. Maybe she's trolling her daughter. How do we know that the poison even survives being cooked in the steak, as you mentioned?
Yeah.
So actually, when you break it all down and think about it, there's no saying that everyone's going to die.
Speaking of which, I have a theory, or I've come up with my little prediction for, like, if a series 2 had been made, what would it look like considering this ending? Do you want to hear it?
I do want to hear it, yes, yeah.
So, basically, everyone gets food poisoning, and Max dies, and then Sam ends up in hospital. So this is my theory, that basically Sam's poison isn't potent enough, because it's in line with his character of not being great at anything, you know.
Yeah.
Like, he can't even successfully poison, you know, these people. So he ends up in hospital, and the police are able to trace the eggs back to Sam, because they realise that, this has the same, like, stuff as his thing, and he was found with an egg in his mouth, so, like, okay, it must have contaminated some eggs, and then tried to commit suicide. And so they realise that, okay, so Sam is responsible for this. You know, Max was the only one to die just because he was unlucky. That's how these things go. He gets blamed for all for the murder and attempted murder of everyone, and then Val is able to get away with it. Over the course of the series, Leo and Iris are now trying to run the town, and that's like their through line, whilst the guilt is eating Val alive. You know, she can't sort of live with herself, but she's trying to just get on with stuff and keep having gotten away with it, basically. In the final episode, Maria finds out that Val killed Max, and now she needs to decide what to do with that information, and that would be where we would start series 3.
Wow, you've got a 3-series plan.
Well, I've got a 2-series plan with a cliffhanger at the end of series 2, but yeah.
That's very insightful, and because then that carries on the trend of Maria's then the next eldest. What of Candy's Eater and Big Claire?
They can get up to some sitcom shenanigans, a new adventure every episode, inconsequential to the overall plot, whatever.
And what about Leo's burgeoning sexuality? Are we going to see more?
Yes.
I wonder. The subplot I would write is maybe as he's helping Iris try and run the town, he meets this older businessman who ends up taking advantage, not taking advantage, but sort of takes advantage of the power dynamic.
Sounds like taking advantage.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I quite like the ending to this. It reminds me of the 2021 American apocalyptic political satire black comedy film, Don't Look Up. That's what Wikipedia has it as.
Yeah.
Because that, spoiler alert, ends, well, it's about, people not believing that the world's going to end because a meteor's going to crash into it. And it's a pretty unsubtle metaphor for climate change. And it ends with the asteroid meteor hitting the Earth and destroying humanity. And Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence's characters and their whole families are just sort of sat around this one table, holding each other's hands, having dinner, just accepting their fate. And this idea of everyone dying around a dinner table, very interesting.
Well, it's because the dinner table is sort of it represents family, and this idea that you should spend your last moments with your family if you know when it's going to happen.
The dinner table, it's a very interesting image, the dinner table. I recently watched Denis Villeneuve of Dune and Blade Runner and Arrival fame, made a short film in 2008
called Next Floor.
Yes, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
which sort of subverts the image of the dining table into something else. That's got no relevance to what we're discussing, but I just thought I'd say that I'd seen that film.
Yeah, good. I think when I was brainstorming ideas for a podcast, one of the first ideas was an exploration of Denis Villeneuve that would include that film. So yeah.
There is less Villeneuve content versus RTD content, I will say that.
No, certainly. Also, I mean, I thought, like, should I do Villeneuve or someone who has done a lot of stuff like Michael Winterbottom or, like, maybe the Coens? But then I realised that, like, I mainly watch TV.
Yeah.
And so I got to do something TV-related, and yeah, that's where we are now.
Here we are.
So yes, so do you have what do you think series 2 episode 1 might look like if there was?
I quite let's entertain the fact that they all die.
Yeah.
I think then we end up in this peculiar scenario where there's this whole thing about if the result hasn't come out yet, does the vote become invalid? I quite like, it would really change the genre, but what if we have to go and hunt down the next heir to Swansea? It would be, I'll tell you what it would be. It'd be like Shrek the Third in that that's the plot, and also it will not be as well received as the previous films.
Yeah.
So yeah, I quite like, and I just, we've watched enough RTD content together to know that he's a limited series kind of guy. He always tells these one-off television stories. The exceptions being Queer as Folk, which had Queer as Folk 2, and the obvious show that we don't talk about, which is a continuing science fiction drama.
Yes, for the long-running British science fiction drama, yeah.
Yeah. He's very good at telling a one-time story.
Yes.
And this is an interesting ending because...
Do you remember Cougarton Manor from Community?
Cougarton...
It's the fictional British sitcom that the real American sitcom
yes,
is based off of in the show.
Yes.
And like Cougarton Manor, it runs for 6 episodes, and then everyone commits mass suicide at the end.
Yes.
And then Britta is like, honestly, British shows are so great because at the end you get closure. You know, they don't leave it on a bunch of random unresolved stuff. Of course, Arbed hates that, but I have to say, in that moment, I was like, Britta is the only person who's right now. I am Team Britta in this one moment. Normally, she chats shit, but in this moment, she's bang on the money. Like, I love it when something just ends and you're like, okay, good. It wrapped up.
But then he has to watch a different version of a British television show, Inspector Space-Time.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Mine or Mine. We've done it. We've finished it.
We've done it. We've given it to you, and now it's yours, all yours.
It's ours, all ours. It doesn't really work. What do you think of it? Any sort of overall thoughts, Louis?
I always feel a bit on the spot when I have to like give my overall thoughts, and then afterwards in the edit, I'm like, I should have said this, I should have said that. I don't really know what to think of this. I think it's solid, fun drama that you don't really know where it's going. I do certainly think that if the Val division had happened at the end of episode 2 instead of episode 4, and then from then on, it's like Max is running the town, he's doing crazy stuff. There's like wacky antics every week, And, you know, the romance plot lines kind of continue at the same pace, and the affair stuff continues at the same pace. But, like, if we got to because, you know, episode 5 was so much fun. It was so electric. I think it was a really good episode to watch. I think it's one of the best episodes of a podcast in our series covering this. And so it was like, if we could have had more of that, that would have been better. And then, you know, he keeps sort of getting out of these scrapes, and only after episodes 3, 4, and 5 is it like, okay, let's have this election. But instead, it's like he's at the top, and then it falls, and then it's election time, and it's like,
yeah,
we were there so briefly. We saw a glimpse of that other show, and I think because this episode also had like a lot of action, a lot of interest.
Yeah,
and the fact that these 2 episodes were smushed into like 1 episode in syndication.
Yeah,
it's like,
I think,
but these are the best 2 episodes, you know.
I think I agree with you in that it's a strong concept for a show, and I think genre and form wise, RTD didn't quite go to all the places maybe you would have expected. Because you spend the whole show waiting for Max to have power and see what he does with it, and you, as you rightly said, you don't see very much of that.
It's sort of,
maybe it would have been
like episode 4 is all kind of admin, and then he sets up the Val division. It's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And it's like, what if episode 2 could have been the sorting out the legal stuff with his dad, and, you know, doing this admin, and getting this vision of the Valdi vision of this sort of direct democracy kind of idea, you know.
Maybe this would have suited a longer running sitcom as opposed to a comedy drama. That being said, what the show tries to be, I think it does very well. I think its comedy is very good, even if, you know, a little bit outdated. Characters that I am drawn to, that I, you know, especially like Leo and Leo's sort of arc and his date with Yanta in the previous episode. Like, I am sad to think that he potentially might be dead after the finale. And I love the setting of Swansea, and there's little streets. I enjoyed it. It's not life-changing, and I can kind of see why it has the sort of the least cultural impact of all the shows we've watched so far.
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, as we close the book on Mine All Mine, all that means is that now it's time to go on to the next television show by Russell T Davies. What is it, Zach?
Checks notes. It's Casanova, I believe.
Woo! Casanova, which saw the introduction into the RTD EU of a certain actor by the name of David MacDonald. Of course, his stage name is David Tennant. I've seen staged. I know what his real name is.
I'm Googling to see if there's any other actors in there.
Rose Byrne is in this. Now she's like Hollywood, so.
And Nina Sasanya.
Oh, yeah.
Who is one of my favourite British actors, like television actors, but appears in my least favourite episode of Doctor Who that isn't even on the iPlayer anymore. So, I never see her in that.
Wow, what episode was... Oh, Fear Her?
Yes.
Why is it not on the... Oh, yes, because of the... Yep, okay, let's not say out loud why it is, but I remember why they took it off. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I've got the DVDs, digital, physical media all the way. But this is a discussion for a future episode.
Yes. So yeah, with that, all it remains for us to say is thanks for listening to the David-Lloyd Davis podcast, and thanks for listening to us talk about just the most obscure of TV shows, gotta say. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed your stay in Swansea, but, you know, now you've got to pick up your bags, leave your B&B, and go get kidnapped by the guy from Midsummer Murders. Yeah, until next time, you can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me on Instagram at Louis on Air, Twitter at Louis on the Air. Zach, do you have anything to plug?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that because I've already been a slave to the lack of puns that I've got in this show. I'm praying that Casanova is going to give me something more. So no, nothing to plug today. Just freedom from my lack of ideas. Okay, I've got an idea. You've started manufacturing explosive devices from your factory as part of Minal Industries. And so you're trying to sell people your Minal mines. Oh, they're perfect. That's exactly what I'm doing. You read my mind. I completely forgot that's what I was. That was my side gig at the moment. Good stuff. See you in a fortnight. Woohoo! Bye-bye.
Lovely.